Hi, I'm Lacey, and on the night of my birthday, my sister-in-law stood up during dessert to announce she was pregnant with my husband's child. It wasn't just the betrayal, it was the applause, the way no one looked at me, the way my silence was mistaken for surrender. But what would you do if the very people who should protect you cheered for the one who wrecked you? Before we dive in, what time are you listening to this, and where are you watching from? Drop a comment below, I really want to know. The scent of roast chicken mingled with rosemary and cloves, warm and familiar in the way I used to think family was supposed to be. Soft jazz drifted from the corner speaker, and candles flickered politely on the table. I adjusted the napkins for the third time. No one noticed, but I needed something to do with my hands. Tonight wasn't grand, just 10 people, 1 cake, and maybe a few glances of gratitude. I didn't need fireworks, just a room where I felt like I belonged. Travis had said, "Let's keep it simple this year." I had agreed, mostly because I didn't have the energy to fight for more. I smoothed my dress and checked my reflection in the kitchen window. My smile looked borrowed. They arrived slowly, like snow that doesn't stick. Raymond, always on time, handed me a bottle of wine with a stiff nod. Lenora came next, air-kissing my cheek like she wasn't pretending I wasn't her daughter-in-law most of the year. Rowan caught my eye from across the room and gave me the only genuine smile that landed. Marla was last. She always was. She breezed in with a champagne-colored blouse and smugness tucked under her tongue. Her voice carried. "Sorry, darlings. Traffic. Or maybe I just like making an entrance." My fingers tightened around the serving spoon. Dinner was uneventful in the way slow pain often is. I poured wine, laughed at half-hearted jokes, and ignored the way Travis kept checking his phone. After dessert plates were cleared and the last sip of Pinot was swallowed, I stood and reached for the knife. The cake was nothing fancy, vanilla sponge, lemon buttercream. I'd made it myself. No inscription, just soft swirls of white and yellow. Just mine. The knife was halfway down when Marla clinked her glass. It was always her. "Before we do this," she said, rising with a smile so polished it reflected candlelight, "I just have to share something." Everyone turned. I didn't move. "I just think it's adorable that we're all making such a fuss about this. I mean, 42 isn't exactly a milestone, right?" Some nervous laughter. Lenora giggled too loudly. "But you know what is." Marla placed a hand on her stomach. "Creating life." She paused for dramatic effect like she always did. "I'm pregnant." Cheers, gasps, a few actual claps. Lenora stood and hugged her, hands pressed reverently over her belly like she was meeting the Messiah. Travis stood, awkward, then patted Marla's shoulder. The knife was still in my hand. No one looked at me, not one. It wasn't rage, not yet, just quiet. I stepped back as the table filled with congratulations. Marla beamed like she'd won something. She always needed to win something. I watched her sit down again, right where I had stood. She picked up a fork, took a bite of cake. My cake. She said sweetly. Lemon. So unexpected. Someone had put her glass of sparkling water beside my wine. I stared at it without blinking. I had planned this dinner for weeks. Shopped, cooked, cleaned every inch of this house. I bought the flowers she now brushed her hand across like they were her idea. I ironed the tablecloth. I even remembered to chill the wine Raymond liked. And now I was scenery. The guests drifted back into conversation like I hadn't even been edited out of my own night. Travis came up beside me, whispered. She didn't mean anything by it. Of course she didn't. I nodded, my eyes still locked on the glass. "Don't make this bigger than it is," he added. I turned to him slowly. "Don't worry." Then I smiled. It wasn't forced. It wasn't fake. It was surgical. She had no idea what was coming next. The silence after everyone left was almost kind. It gave the house back to itself. Only the soft hum of the fridge and the distant ticking of the dining room clock remained. I stood in the kitchen, alone, scraping bits of frosting from plates no one had finished. The cake was barely touched. I didn't even blow out the candles. They had melted down into puddles of wax, leaning like they'd collapsed under the weight of all the unspoken things I never said. The knife I used to slice the cake was still in the sink, its edge dulled with lemony icing and fingerprints. It looked like something left behind after an accident, witness to a moment no one wanted to acknowledge. I rinsed it under cold water. The icing clung like it didn't want to let go. As I loaded the dishwasher, my mind played back every second of the evening, as if pressing rewind might change the ending. But there was no glitch, no edit. Marla had announced her pregnancy. Travis had smiled. The applause had drowned me out like I was background music. This wasn't new. 3 years ago, it was our 10th wedding anniversary. I had reserved a private room at Mateo's, printed small menu cards with our names, even hired a violinist to play during dessert. Everyone showed up late, except Marla. She arrived last, red lips, high heels, and just as I lifted my glass to toast, she tapped hers and said, "Actually, I have an announcement." She was getting engaged, to someone none of us had met, someone she stopped mentioning 2 months later. I remembered how everyone stood and hugged her, how the violinist stopped mid-note, how my toast stayed folded in my purse. That night, as Travis drove us home, I asked him, "Did you know she was going to do that?" He had shrugged. "Marla's just like that. You know how she is." I did. She didn't want attention. She wanted mine. And every time she stole it, Travis just let her. Tonight had been a sequel, but something in me shifted. Later, after the last plate was dried, I passed his home office on my way to bed. The door was open a crack, just enough to hear his voice. "I'm telling you, she'll never find out. She's too soft. She's always been." He was whispering. I couldn't hear who he was talking to, but the tone, low, confident, unafraid, cut deeper than anything said aloud at dinner. "She's weak," he continued. "She'll huff and puff, then move on." I stood there, one foot on the carpet, one on the tile. I didn't push the door open. I didn't say a word. I just walked away. Not because I was weak, but because I wanted him to think I was. That way, he wouldn't see it coming. That way, I could decide when this story changed direction. In the bedroom, I sat at my vanity. My hands didn't shake. I opened my laptop, created a folder, labeled it Truth, one email thread, one screenshot from our joint account, a photo from the dinner, the beginning of an archive. This ends when I say it ends. 2 nights after the birthday, the house was quiet again, but it wasn't the same silence. It was the kind that buzzed beneath the walls, like something waiting to be discovered. I had poured a glass of red I hadn't touched and spread the stack of unopened bills across the dining table, thinking I'd distract myself with routine. But the numbers refused to behave. The bank app pinged. A withdrawal, $4,800, from Travis's retirement account, labeled Final Clinic Payment. I stared at it for longer than I should have. Not because I didn't understand, but because I did. This wasn't a loan to help a cousin. This wasn't something routine buried in our medical benefits. This was a transaction done intentionally, quietly, something he never mentioned because he never meant to. My pulse slowed. I clicked through the transaction history. Same account, several transfers, some labeled vague things like consult follow-up or family support. But this one, it was final. I walked into his home office, sat down at his desk, opened his browser. He hadn't cleared anything. I didn't need a password to find the email chain. "Hi, Travis. Just confirming Marla's final ultrasound appointment next Wednesday at 10:30 a.m. Let us know if you'd like us to coordinate with the lab for a secondary genetic panel." He didn't even bother to use a fake email. I scrolled through it again and again. The word Marla was embedded in subject lines, file names, attachments. All I could think was, they didn't even try to hide it, because they didn't think I'd ever look. I pulled out my laptop, opened the folder I had created just days ago. Truth. One more screenshot, one more email, one more reason. When Travis got home, he didn't say anything. Dropped his keys on the counter, loosened his tie. He looked tired, genuinely tired, as if lying required more from him than truth ever could. I didn't speak. I just watched him move through our kitchen like everything was still his, like his ring still meant anything, like he hadn't carved out part of our lives and given it to her. And then I caught it. The scent, familiar, soft, floral, Marla's perfume. She wore it to the birthday dinner. She always did, cloying and smug, and now it clung to him. He passed me without looking. "I'll shower," he said. I nodded, not because I agreed, because I'd already decided what came next. I opened my planner, flipped past this week, circled a day in the 3rd week of October, game time. The air in the room was heavy with laughter that had died too quickly. The echo of congratulations still clung to the walls, even though Marla had already shifted her glow toward her second helping of cake. My cake, the one no one had touched before she did. I looked around. Not a single eye landed on me. Travis avoided my gaze, pretending to refill his water. Lenora wiped a tear from her cheek, as if she'd witnessed something sacred. Raymond sat stiffly, his jaw clenched so tight the veins at his temples pulsed. No one asked how I felt, not even once. The cake, still half standing, slumped in the center of the table like a monument to everything I had swallowed. I lifted my glass, slow and steady. Forks clinked against porcelain. Conversations trailed off mid-sentence. Travis glanced at me, eyebrows raised, but I didn't look at him. "To motherhood," I said, "especially the unexpected kind." A few nervous chuckles. Marla froze with her fork halfway to her mouth. "And to the fathers, even more unexpected." Lenora tilted her head. "I beg your—" "Because," I continued, turning fully toward Marla, "it's not every day you carry the child of a married man, is it, Marla?" Silence. It wasn't shocked, it was stunned. A thick, stunned kind of silence, the kind that stretches across a room and sticks to the back of your throat like dust. Marla's smile cracked, just barely. Her eyes darted between faces, gauging the damage. I reached into my purse and laid a manila folder on the table. Neat, unwrinkled. It looked too ordinary to hold anything powerful. "Go ahead, Raymond," I said. "Start with page 3. Raymond hesitated. Then he opened it. He didn't need long. His expression fell in slow motion. Lenora leaned in, whispering, "What is that?" "Proof," I said softly. "Of what?" Marla's voice was sharp, panicked. "What is this, Lacey? Some kind of weird jealousy?" Raymond looked up. His eyes didn't meet mine. They landed squarely on Travis. "Clinic invoices," he said, voice flat. "Bank transfers, ultrasound schedules, to your email." Travis didn't move. "I'm telling you," Marla snapped, "this is fake. She probably used Photoshop. Or AI. Everyone's doing that now." Rowan let out a breath beside me. Not a laugh, not a sigh. Something like a warning. Travis opened his mouth, closed it again. Marla stood. "You people are insane. I don't have to sit here and be humiliated. No one asked you to sit." I cut in. "You invited yourself, as always." She froze. I didn't rise. I didn't yell. I stayed seated, watched her hands tremble just enough to rattle her wine glass. "You wanted the spotlight," I said quietly. "Here it is." The casserole dish felt heavier than it should have. Maybe because I knew I wasn't just returning Pyrex. I was walking into a room I wasn't supposed to be part of anymore. But there I was, Sunday afternoon, standing on the front porch of the Griggs family home. The sky hung low with gray, typical October. I rang the bell. Lenora opened the door with a surprised smile that didn't touch her eyes. "Oh, sweetheart," she said, stepping aside. "Come in. You didn't have to return this so soon." I didn't reply, just nodded and stepped inside. That familiar scent of lemon polish and something old and floral, probably the potpourri bowl from 1995, greeted me. Then I saw him, Travis, sitting on the edge of the living room couch like a teenager summoned to the principal's office. Raymond sat in the armchair across from him, spine straight, hands steepled. Lenora tried to fill the silence. "We were just talking through some things." Raymond didn't blink. "Stay, Lacey." I stayed. There was a photo on the end table, our anniversary dinner 4 years ago. Marla had taken it. Now the glass over it was cracked in the top corner, as if someone had knocked it over and then pretended nothing happened. Raymond stood. Enough small talk. "Travis, don't say a word." Travis blinked. "Dad, I think we should—" Raymond raised a hand. "You had chances. You used everyone to lie." The room was still. I didn't breathe. "Now you're done talking. Sit there, listen, and don't you dare interrupt." Lenora reached for Raymond's arm. "Please, he's still your—" He stopped being a son the day he started acting like a coward. Travis flinched. Raymond didn't. His voice didn't rise. That made it worse. The quiet was its own kind of verdict. My eyes met Travis's for the first time since the dinner. He looked smaller somehow, like he'd shrunk into the shell of someone who once knew how to be decent. No one spoke for a while. Then Raymond turned and said, "Lacey, I'll walk you out." We stepped outside into the gray. The air was crisp but not cold, the kind of day that tricks you into thinking fall is gentle. Halfway down the walkway, Raymond stopped. "I saw him," he said. My head turned. Back in July, at a parking lot behind Jefferson Medical, he was dropping her off, Marla. I didn't move, just listened. I told myself it was nothing. Maybe she needed a ride. Maybe I didn't want to know. I finally looked at him. "Why are you telling me now?" "Because you've been walking through this alone, and I stopped you when I should have stood next to you." I didn't thank him. That would have made it easier. Instead, I said, "Now you know what I've been doing alone." He nodded. From inside the house, I heard Lenora's voice rise. "Why are you doing this to your own blood?" Raymond's reply came low and muffled, but sharp enough to slice through the walls. "Because blood doesn't excuse betrayal." I reached my car door, slid my keys in. It wasn't just my war anymore. The phone call came at 9:16 a.m. while I was standing in line for coffee, pretending life hadn't cracked under my feet. It was HR. "Lacey, we need to inform you that due to recent allegations, we're placing you on administrative leave effective immediately." I froze, not in shock, but in calculation. "What allegations?" I asked. A pause. "Sexual misconduct? Intimidation? Misappropriation of county funds?" I stared at the floor, beige tile, a stain shaped like Texas. I could almost hear Marla's voice echoing through the silence. "She's unraveling." They didn't even ask me for a statement, just told me to clean out my things and expect follow-up interviews when appropriate. When I got back to the office, I didn't touch anything. I stood at my desk, staring at my chair like it was a stranger. The space I'd built my reputation in suddenly felt like someone else's. I'd worked too hard, earned too much to be reduced to whispers. That's when I called Rowan. Within 30 minutes, she was in my living room with her laptop open and eyes already narrowed. "Send me everything," she said. "Now." She read through the PDFs the firm had forwarded me. Her fingers stopped at a paragraph. She leaned in. "This wording's familiar." She started running trace metadata, email headers, timestamps, device identifiers. Her silence wasn't calm, it was a scalpel. "The IP is from Tacoma," she muttered. "Guess who used to intern at your office 2 years ago?" My breath caught. "Dina Carver," she said. "The one you fired for forging a witness statement." I remembered. She had cried in my office, said I ruined her future. I'd called her bluff and let the decision stand. She had always struck me as someone looking for shortcuts. Rowan tilted the laptop toward me. "Guess who contacted Marla on LinkedIn last month?" I didn't need to read further. "Marla didn't just throw mud," Rowan said. "She hired a mudslinger." I felt nothing. No anger. Just the sudden stillness of knowing your enemy plays dirtier than you imagined, and that she was willing to burn my career to salvage her lie. I walked into my bedroom, opened the drawer where I kept everything that still made sense, pulled out the ring I hadn't worn in weeks, placed it into an envelope labeled Exhibit C. The rest of the day, I assembled everything, every screenshot, text log, calendar invite. I formatted it like a prosecutor would, sections, annotations, references. A binder, thick and neatly tabbed. They wanted a woman on the edge? I'd give them a woman with a timeline and a case number. That evening, as dusk settled outside and my inbox grew colder, my phone buzzed. It was Travis. "Can we talk privately? Before this gets worse." I looked at the screen for a long time, then typed back, "You had your chance? See you in the discovery phase." I closed the binder. The sound echoed louder than any courtroom gavel. Raymond called it a conversation, but we all knew it wasn't. The chairs in the dining room were spaced too far apart. The napkins were folded too neatly. The silence before anyone spoke was too rehearsed. This wasn't about reconciling. It was about cornering. Travis sat to the left of the table, jaw locked, eyes blank. Marla wore a pale blue blouse that didn't match her tone. Cool, almost casual. Lenora poured tea with shaky hands. I sat across from all of them, unmoved. Rowan was at my side, and so was a folder labeled June in bold black ink. I didn't come to watch them explain, I thought. I came to see them finally lose control. Raymond stood at the head of the table. This isn't a family meeting, it's a reckoning. No one answered. Then the doorbell rang. June entered slowly, clutching a manila envelope. Her shoulders were tense, her eyes wary. She gave me a short nod, less greeting, more confirmation. I wasn't sure I could do this, she said. But then I remembered what it feels like to have no one believe you. She opened the envelope and pulled out a document. This is a police report, she said. Filed in 2013. Marla accused a teacher of inappropriate conduct. The case was dropped when evidence proved she forged the texts. Marla scoffed. Are you seriously? Let her finish, Raymond interrupted. June laid the paper flat on the table. After that, she told people I was stalking her, that I was mentally unstable. I lost my job, my fiancé left me. No one wanted to hear the truth. I looked at Marla. She didn't blink. She told me it was for fun, June continued, voice cracking. That watching someone unravel gave her a sense of control. Lenora dropped her teacup. It didn't shatter, but the sound was enough. You never told me that, Lenora whispered. I told you she wasn't right, June said. You laughed. Silence stretched, thick like smoke in a closed room. I ended up in a facility for 3 months, June added, quieter. Not because I was crazy, but because I couldn't breathe without defending myself. Travis's face twisted. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. You're just bitter, Marla snapped. Everyone always is. That's when the photo fell, a family portrait from 10 years ago. It slipped from the sideboard and hit the floor, glass cracking in a single jagged line down the middle. No one touched it. Tell me it isn't true, Lenora whispered. No one answered. Travis finally looked up. Did you really do this to her too? Marla rolled her eyes. She deserved it. The room collapsed into a different kind of silence. June walked over to the photo. She picked it up carefully, turned it face down, and set it back on the table. Then she left. Raymond had turned the dining room into a courtroom. Not metaphorically, literally. Chairs had been repositioned into a semicircle. A pitcher of water sat in the center beside a stack of printed folders, labeled and clipped. A legal pad rested in front of each seat, though no one touched them. The lighting was dimmer than usual, like even the bulbs wanted to avoid what was coming. You all know why you're here, Raymond began, his voice steady. You just don't know how deep this goes. Marla crossed her arms, leaning back in her chair. So dramatic. Are we doing this like a movie now? No one responded. Travis kept his gaze fixed on the table, his thumb pressed against the base of his wine glass over and over like he was waiting to vanish through it. Rowan stood and passed out documents. Pages slid across wood like a dealer tossing a bad hand. Marla grabbed hers without looking. IP traces, Rowan said. Linked to the anonymous emails sent to HR. Matched to a device that logs in through Marla's home network. Raymond didn't blink. Continue. Audio, Rowan said, pulling out a small speaker. From Dina Carver, former intern. She says Marla contacted her on LinkedIn and offered her money to submit a complaint. The room stiffened. Lenora gasped. Her lips moved, but no words followed. I watched Marla scan the packet in front of her. Her fingers shook. She slammed it closed. You people are insane, she snapped. She's just a bitter ex-intern. She had it out for Lacey for years. No, I said. You found someone angry and pointed her in my direction. Same thing you did to June. Same thing you tried with everyone else who got in your way. I was protecting myself, Marla hissed. From you. From what? I asked. Being ignored? Marla stood. You're all just jealous. That's what this is, every single one of you. Raymond didn't move. Jealous of what? She pointed at me. Of me getting attention. Of people loving me. Of knowing how to fight. Travis looked up. This isn't fighting, Marla. This is destroying. Oh, please, she laughed. It sounded wrong, tinny and off-pitch. They deserved it. The chandelier flickered overhead. No one touched a switch. Lenora covered her mouth, shaking her head. I don't know who you are. Rowan pressed stop on the recorder. Raymond stood slowly, gaze steady on Marla. And now, he said quietly, we're done pretending. No one argued. I pushed back my chair. I didn't speak. I didn't need to. As I turned toward the door, Rowan pulled out her phone. She tapped once. Upload complete, she said. If the law couldn't stop her, maybe shame would. The podcast started playing on its own. Autoplay, probably. I hadn't meant to listen to it, not really. But there it was, queued up and echoing through the quiet kitchen of my sublet apartment. Welcome back to Unspoken, where today's episode is titled Dating the Devil. The voice on the other end was low, measured, male, a name I didn't recognize, but the story? Oh, I knew the story. He talked about a woman he loved who faked a pregnancy to keep him, who created fake emails to sabotage his career, who made him believe he was going crazy, then turned around and told his friends he was unstable. She was magnetic. You couldn't tell where her charm ended and your identity began. He didn't say her name. He didn't have to. It didn't bring peace. It brought proof. I needed one. The world needed one. I turned off the podcast halfway through. Not because I couldn't handle it, because I already had. The next day, I stopped by my old office to return a keycard. My badge had been reactivated. My desk was still there, cleaner than I remembered. No one said much. A few awkward nods. A polite, "Glad you're back," from the receptionist. I didn't stay long. Later, Rowan called. She's deleted everything. Instagram, Facebook, even her Etsy page. Where is she? Rumor says she moved out of state, somewhere quiet. Somewhere she can start over. Of course she did. That evening, I got a text from Raymond. If you ever need a home-cooked meal that doesn't come with betrayal, you know where to find us. I read it twice. Didn't respond. Not yet. A few days later, a package arrived. No return address. Inside, a thin silver bracelet. The same one I had once admired on Marla's wrist at a Christmas party years ago. No note, no explanation. I didn't cry. I placed it in a drawer, turned the key, locked it. Some apologies come wordless. Some never come at all. You learn to breathe around both. That night, I sat at my desk, opened a new tab. Start your own nonprofit advocacy for women in crisis. The cursor blinked like it was waiting on me. This story isn't who I am, I typed, but it's where I begin again. I didn't burn the bridge behind me. I watched it collapse, then picked up the bricks. Looking back, I realized the silence wasn't the enemy. It was the training ground. It taught me how to listen beyond the noise, how to gather truth when no one offered it, and how to stand, especially when no one stands with you. If you're going through something that feels unfair, isolating, or impossible, know this. Survival isn't about yelling the loudest. Sometimes, it's about knowing exactly when to speak and making sure they never forget what you said. Maybe you've been the Lacey in your own story, or maybe you've met a Marla. Either way, I'd love to know. What would you have done? If this story resonated with you, comment 1 below, or tell me where you're watching from. If you didn't connect with it, I still want to hear from you. What didn't land, and why? And if you'd like to hear more real stories that challenge, heal, and inspire, don't forget to subscribe and stay with us. Your voice matters here.